Welcome back inside the Now Morning Show. Inside your spotlight this morning, Senator the Honorable Hassel Bacchus, Minister of Digital Transformation, joins us to chat about the Caribbean Telecommunications Union ICT Week, which happened last week, essentially. Good morning to you, Senator.
Good morning, and good morning to your viewers on the Now Morning Show.
How are you doing this morning?
Very good, actually. A bit tired.
Well, I know you had a late night last night in the Parliament.
Yeah, I was there last night for a little bit, putting the MDT perspective on the budget. So, yeah.
All right, we'll chat about that in a little while. I want to jump back to last week because you had an exciting week last week. Let me say congratulations on your re-election as president.
Yes. Tell
me, well, give me an overview. How did it go from your perspective?
The ICT Week, in this case, is a flagship event. We do it every year. We have a number of things. I remember the CTU is a CARICOM-based organization, 20 member states that we have in the CTU. And so we host it in a number of places every year. This year it was in beautiful St. Kitts and Nevis. Minister Conway Maynard was our host. And it was, I think, it was interesting for a number of ministers had not been to St. Kitts and Nevis. It represents, I think, maybe 40% of us. First time we've been there. Beautiful place, real great hospitality, the commendations for St. Kitts and Nevis, and I want to add to that. Excellent thing. As far as the ICT Week was concerned, it's a week of events. And in that, we also have a couple specific things for the CTU itself. The Exec Council meets and does its work, as well as the Conference of Ministers meet, of which I'm the president of the Conference of Ministers. Right.
So tell me some of the discussions that we had, because I imagine you'll talk about everything that's talking about technology.
Oh yeah, well remember, we are here to, and remember it's all of my fellow ministers,
right?
All 20 of us, and along with our advisors. And we are there really to forward the digital agenda of CARICOM and the Caribbean in general, and to make sure that we have some level of unison and harmony in what we're doing. We would have met, the Exec Council would have met to create work program, understand where it is. The Conference of Ministers would have approved that. We would have gone through our elections. And we also would have put a number of resolutions to the vote and have them approved relative to development and things that are happening within the Caribbean space.
All right, so as it stands now, what are some of the challenges that we face in the Caribbean space when it comes to development of technology?
Actually, it's what makes us unique, and what makes us great is actually what creates a problem. Every island, if you go through the islands from South to North, Trinidad, Tobago, Grenada, Barbados, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Martinique, Dominica, Guadeloupe, St. Kitts, going up that way, if you take one island to the other, they're very different.
Very.
We have similar challenges, but we're very different in what we need to address them.
Okay.
And so what the CTU does, it creates a bridge between the needs of all of these states, representing them at international fora, but also finding ways for us to collaborate to identify from people who are trying to help us, our international partners, to ensure that each individual state and island and country gets what it needs, as opposed to a generic, vanilla flavor thing that doesn't really work for anyone. So it's important that we know that it is in our differences, politically, language-wise, needs of our populations, the way in which people want their country to be. All of that represents the challenges that we have. Because remember, the technology is simply a conduit to get to a point where you're improving the lives of citizens.
Right, but the resources to be able to fulfill that mandate.
Yeah, so that is, again, one of the things that we're trying to do. If you look through the prospectus that we had, and also the number of speakers and the number of international partners that we have, all of them bring something to bear on the society that we're dealing with, in the whole Caribbean society. And so apart from what the governments themselves put in, and the governments themselves put in a lot, there's a lot of external support happening, particularly in the ICT space. If you just take things that we can't manage exclusively on our own, cybersecurity is a good example. How are we dealing with the influx of AI across the board? How are we going to deal with regulations specific to every individual island and country as it pertains to broadcast, as it pertains to who operates, what type of licenses you do, invasive technologies like LEOs, etc. All of that is being dealt with, and all of that represents the challenges that we have across the Caribbean space.
And how are we dealing with developing the human resources to be able to meet those needs?
Yeah, and that is one of the key things that is happening. If you go through the calendar, one of the first things that happened 7 o'clock the first morning, people barely were awake, was the youth youth part of what we were doing, we had a number of secretary generals there,
Right.
and it was interesting. I think it probably was the first time that we had in the Caribbean that many secretary generals of international organizations there. We had our own secretary general of CTU, Rodney Taylor was there. We had the secretary general of the CTO, Bernadette Lewis was there, and we had the secretary general of the ITU, Ms. Bogdan Martin was there. Both female secretary generals are the first of their type in their organizations.
Okay.
They all were there and participating in the youth forum, which was the first thing we had on the agenda. So we have recognized that a significant part of the upskilling of what we have to do resides in getting the youth involved. It's no different to what we're doing here. And so having them as a key part of it, having them be the focus of it, in our discussions, it came up almost all the time that we must focus on the youth to get them where they need to go. And their responsibility is not only to get themselves educated and familiarized and able to work in this digital environment, but to help the older ones.
Yeah.
And that is a key component, and I think it's overlooked a lot, but they got that message, and they were quite excited to do it.
Nice. Well, I'm happy to hear that. Where does that put us when it comes to, competitively speaking, in the global digital landscape? Where are we right now?
Individually as countries, if you look through any international rating, you'll find that we're somewhere middle to lower part of it. As a region, though, we're a force. And you could tell that when we went to the ITU's equivalent of this in Bucharest in 2022, we represented at that time 15 island nations.
Right.
As a CTU, we had that group behind us. Now, think about Trinidad and Tobago, 1, St. Kitts, 1, Antigua, 1. But look at the difference. United States, 1,
Right.
Canada, 1. So when you look at us as a bloc, and I'm just using that as an example, if we can harmonize what we have as a Caribbean, as a CARICOM, and utilize it as a bloc, as a force, then we become as powerful as anybody else.
How do we utilize it? Because even though we might have 15 different nations or 20, as the case may be, we still don't have the same level of resources as the one US would have access to or the one Canada would have access to. So how do we match up in that regard?
So that's why organizations like the CTU and the ability for us as ministers to get together, for the ability that the CARICOM heads get together is really where that happens. Like we indicated before, as I indicated before, you have different requirements in different places, but you also have different strengths in different places.
Right.
I'll use a very simple example. Trinidad and Tobago on island has 5 tier 3 certified data centers, 5. You go to the rest of the Caribbean islands, if you find one like that, you're lucky. What does that mean? It means that the resources we have can be shared and utilized by the other Caribbean islands.
Okay, is that part of the conversation as well?
That conversation has always been ongoing. We just recently released the digital transformation strategy for Trinidad and Tobago 2024 to 2027. Actually, my fellow ministers got copies of it while I was in St. Kitts. And in that, there's a regional component to it. So our digital transformation thrust is not only for Trinidad and Tobago, for us to be the this and that and the best in this and no. It's for us to be able to do what we need to do to get to the point for our citizens, but also to make available the things that we're doing to the rest of the CARICOM society. And I think that is what is going to happen across all of us. It's not just in technology, food, energy, you name it. We have to have that level of collaboration.
And that's the thing, is that level of collaboration, we often hear about it when it comes to food, we hear about it when it comes to energy. So that's why I think it's important for us to hear about it when it comes to digital transformation as well. Because I imagine that not only will we be able to lend our expertise, but we will also be able to receive as well in a similar manner.
No question. Let's think about it. I was traveling back on the flight from St. Kitts and had to make out the immigration and the ED forms. And everybody on the flight was a minister, you know, he had a fix this. So I was like, yeah. But I wanted to, I'm using that as the example. If we wanted to, we could have gone out to anybody in the world and said, listen, build us an ED system. Right here in the Caribbean, CARICOM-based organization, Caribbean Impacts, has one built ready for all of us to use.
So
Barbados is using it. That's exactly, it's in its final phase of testing now.
Okay.
Soon it will be there. It was announced by the Minister of Finance in the budget.
Yeah.
We'll beat the timeline he gave. But the idea is that is an example of us benefiting from a CARICOM-created entity providing a service that all of us need. But all we have to do as heads is say, listen, we will adopt this and use it. We don't have to, but we should.
We should.
And that is where the collaboration and the thinking, where we get the benefits of economies of scale, where we get the benefits of technology that is proven and working by our own people, and all we have to do is use it. No cost to us to use the software.
No cost.
No cost. Caribbean Impacts built it. They own the IP. It operates. So Barbados uses it. St. Lucia uses it. St. Kitts uses it. We use it to go into St. Kitts.
Yeah.
Antigua is adopting it now. We're adopting it as well. It just speaks to the way in which we have to work as a Caribbean.
Now, Minister, we only have a few more minutes left, but I really wanted us to touch on some of the plans that you have in store for the Ministry of Digital Transformation for the next year.
Yeah, well, we've Ministry is 3 years old. We started in July of 2021. And during that time, we've been working on a number of plans, initiatives, programs. We're fully in implementation phase now.
Okay.
So we're not really introducing very many new things in this chapter of what we're doing. We're basically driving hard on our implementation of a number of things. I'll tell you what some of those are. And also embedding them in the society.
All right.
Some of the things that we've done have already taken root. You would have known about our Developers Hub Challenge. It was right here on TTT,
Right.
widely done, extremely well acclaimed. The thing about that is the Developers Hub itself now has well over 1,000, I think maybe in excess of 1,200 registered users on it.
Okay.
Quite unique in what it's doing. Eventually, we expect that to turn into a Trinidad and Tobago software export or development company, entity on its own. The Developers Hub is one thing. We've won international awards for that program. We're talking about building a Tier 4 data center to tie with the one and associated with the one we have in Curaçao. Again, giving the region something that will attract people to do it. We're far south, we're outside of the hurricane belt.
This is not wood, so I think you have to find something else to knock on. But
somebody knock for me, yeah.
Yeah.
We have that. We also have initiatives that pertain to what we're doing with our ICT access centers, the building out of the interconnectivity network we have to allow ministries to be able to operate more efficiently, the EID. And one of them that we don't hear a lot about, we're building what I call a support mechanism. All of this technology that we're putting into the hands of people, they have to be able to use it. One of the things that happens is when it doesn't work or they can't use it, they get frustrated and then they never go back to it.
I can attest to that.
Recognizing that we've already built an ISC on internet, well, I call it a service center, but effectively what it is a multi-channel way that if you are trying to use any service that is delivered via ICT from the government of Trinidad and Tobago, go to those people and they can help you. So that is rolling out at exactly the same time as we're rolling out these new services. And we're starting with the new services, and eventually we'll expand it to deal with all the others. Those are the kinds of things that we're doing.
In terms of, I mean, it's always nice when we get these new ideas, new projects and these new ideas. I think oftentimes our challenge in Trinidad and Tobago has been maintaining them.
Yes.
So we roll it out and it might go good, but how often do we plan to update? How often do we plan to maintain, fix the bugs? Because when we all have cell phones and we get updates on these things whether we want it or not.
Yes.
They fix whatever they think was wrong or whatever. We might not even realize what was wrong,
Yeah.
and they continue to fix, they continue to update.
Yes.
Is that part of the plan as well?
So the ministry is built on a number of principles. One of them is sustainability. We get knocks sometimes for being a bit too slow in introducing things, but it is because of the mechanism that we're using to create them in the first place.
Right.
Meaning, we're working with Estonia, for example, on our interoperability network. We had a choice. We could go to Estonia, get a company, have them come here, build it, pay them to build it, operate it, maintain it, keep it running for us. We chose a different method. And that is get the people from Estonia to come here and help us build it.
And train us to build
Teach us how to build it. Teach us how to operate it. Hold our hands through it. So what is happening now? Well, that took a bit longer, but we're rolling it out ourselves under their guidance. We're being able to continue to update it and manage it ourselves. And we're also able to continue to develop it and grow it ourselves. We're doing that with a number of things, including our EID and so on. So we built in the sustainability from the start. Apart from it being more cost effective, it obviously represents something that is a lot easier and under your control. No significant expenditure in foreign exchange to pay an entity to maintain and operate it. You're using your own expertise. It provides a career path for people here. It increases the requirement of it, and it gives people an idea that we can do this, and we can do it as best as we can.
You mentioned earlier when it came to the CTU that you specifically had a youth seminar talking about the training for the youth and them training the older folk. Do we have something similar for that here in Trinidad and Tobago?
Yeah, so, it's interesting. When you go through a lot of the programs that are put on by the Ministry of Digital Transformation and or partner ministries, because remember, we're a partnership ministry. We don't do all of this on our own.
Yeah.
We have civil society helping us, et cetera, et cetera. When you go through a program of events, you will see that in there. So there are a number of youth fests, a number of youth camps. You see boys in ICT, girls in ICT, etc. And the type of message that I'm giving you now is not traditionally a technology message. We're trying to teach you about technology, but there's a lot of what we used to call, I say we, I'm a lot older than you are, what we used to call civics.
Right. I did civics.
All right, if you say so. But the idea is that, remember, technology is neither good or bad. It's
how you use it. Yeah.
It's how you use it. And if we don't start to instill that type of thing from the youth phase in all of our interactions with them, we're going to run into trouble. Similarly, as we do with cybersecurity, building cyber hygiene, et cetera, the understanding of this technology and your responsibility to use it correctly and to help others to do that is a significant part of what we're doing. So all of our programs have that built in.
Fantastic. The Minister of Finance would have mentioned, I think he was on Twitter or something a few weeks back, that we have a very low uptake in terms of people who are interested in doing online payments, who are using the technology for that regard. Do you have any statistics or data that would support
the TTIFC just recently released its financial inclusion survey results. I was present at it, and it had some startling things in it. I actually put some of that information into the parliamentary record when I was speaking. Low amounts of people that actually have functional bank accounts, as an example.
Okay.
A very low uptake of small and medium enterprise businesses that have business accounts and comfortable with operating in the digital space for payments.
Online banking accounts.
When you look at those statistics, and I found them to be somewhat frightening, those are the things that we have to improve. Our Digital Society program is designed initially to get people to the point where they function. What comes natural to you? Using your phone, using a tablet, using a computer, using your fancy DJ pioneering machine. All of those things come natural to you, but they're not to a significant part of our society.
Right.
And that is age agnostic. It doesn't matter. You would think it would happen to the older generation. No. It is across the board. And so part of what we have to do is to engender ways to get people not only to develop and raise their own digital IQ, but to have access to the services that we're building as we build them. That is happening at a various. The digital society component that we have in the transformation strategy, if people get a hold and read through it, you'll understand where that is. We have a very specific focus on that. Remember, transformation has 4 main components: people, process, technology, and legislation. The hardest part are the first 2, people and process. The technology is easy. We can buy this stuff.
And the legislation?
Legislation is also difficult. You will understand why. I came from the parliament. We don't have these supermajorities that we need, like exist in some places like Barbados, for example. That makes it a lot easier to do some of the things you have to do. So we have to be very creative, quite inventive, and be as persuasive as we can to persuade our political colleagues on the other side to support us in what we're doing. We've been successful, but in minimal cases. So it does impact what we're doing. So it makes the climate and the circumstances a bit more challenging.
Yeah, well, we look forward to seeing you overcome those challenges, especially in the next fiscal year. We look forward to seeing it, and hopefully we'll chat again soon to be able to get the updates as they continue to roll out. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Senator.
Thank you for having me, and enjoy the rest of the day.
You as well. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator the Honorable Hassel Bacchus, Minister of Digital Transformation, chatting with us about 1, CTU, and 2, what's in store for the Ministry of Digital Transformation for the next year. Stay tuned to the Now Morning Show. We'll be right back after this.
From M7.